Day 2 of Baltimore Ravens training camp officially in the books. We dive into takeaways and more with a very special guest next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. And I'm your host, Kevin Allstriker of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. And be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us along in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. But here today, rounding out the week of Purple Friday, the first week of training camp, almost in the books here, and we're going to be talking about it all here with former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail. And Q, is it safe to say this is a true Purple Friday now because football's back in the air? Do we have to save that for the regular season?
I mean, come on. Training camp, that's just it. It starts football season. All that speculation, off-season nonsense, it goes out the window. The Browns have been dethroned as the off-season champions. We don't even know. Maybe the Detroit Lions can take up the mantle, or the New York Jets. How about that? No. The Miami Dolphins, although they did have a somewhat Brian Flores strong end of last year, but maybe they'll take up that off-season champion mantle now that they got Tyreek Hill, and Tua looks like he's going to be the most accurate quarterback. But all that is just speculative because now it's about a meritocracy. That's what this game is built upon. What have you done for me lately? Who's the guys? Who is not the guys? Who are the teams? You could talk all you want as far as potential on paper, but it's what have you done for me lately? It's a week-to-week league, and I'm loving every bit of it. It starts now.
Yeah, and speaking of the Jets, briefly, they worked out Iman Marshall, someone who the Ravens cut just a couple days ago. So we'll see if anything happens there. But we know about the New York Ravens with them signing a lot of players like C.J. Mosley, et cetera. So just a quick side note there. But yeah, training camp in the air, first week of training camp here. And there have already been a lot of tidbits to talk about here. And in the first segment, I just wanted to dive into a couple of ones. We'll start off with Ben Cleveland, who still has not returned from the NFI list. At the time of this recording, maybe it's different when you're listening, but for now, he hasn't returned. It just feels like the conditioning test has been the issue. That it's a beast, though, Q. That conditioning test the Ravens have is a beast. I mean, what's your concern level here with Cleveland? Is it nothing to be concerned about for you?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Listen, I remember years ago, Haloti Ngata was taking a conditioning test, and I forget who was the D lineman that was struggling. And so, it was time for Lodi to report. He comes in and he's like, yeah, you gotta know how to pace it. So he literally paces the test and just aces it. And of course, the guy who was struggling with it, he winds up passing the test. And so when you look at it, it was one of those cases where you got to know what you don't know. And as crazy and oxymoronic as that sounds, the bottom line is that once you get a feel of it, all right, this is what I got to do. All right, then I got to go back out there and get it done. Now, Ben Cleveland, of course, you could say was here last year and all that. Doesn't matter. This is a new year. His offseason, he probably felt like he trained really well. Who knows what happened in those final few weeks before he left his last official workout to go home and chill before training camp. Bottom line is the dude is going to pass the test. There's nothing really that's setting him back because at the end of the day, I understand why they have the test. The test is just to give you a one mental measuring stick of, hey, are you ready to go? Two, it gives the coaches an idea of just how hard can they push you. And three, it's the mental side of it again, in that, yeah, my team, we had a competition and I met the parameters of the competition. So, mentally I'm locked in. And that's how I take it. I think that's how Ben needs to take it. It's much ado about nothing. I think, Michael Pierce, Here's a guy who people were concerned about with his weight and all that, and had some, personal things off season wise that he needed to handle. Dude passed the test. What up? Say something. Come on. So you know what, Ben, do your thing, get the test done so you can go out there with your teammates.
Yeah, and someone else who wasn't out there with his teammates, not that he'd be practicing right now, is David Ajaba. It's become a pretty big storyline for the Ravens, as he is the only rookie in the NFL not to have signed his rookie deal. Now, there is a very big discrepancy, Q, and apparently the reason being the 30-year guarantee number. There is a very big discrepancy in the picks both above and below him, Ajaba being pick number 45, a couple $100,000. So it might just be that the camp's not being able to agree to that money right now. I mean, is there concern there for you with Ojabo? It feels like something should get done, but what are your thoughts?
You know, I can't really complain or say Ojabu's wrong because, oh wait, yeah, back in 1993, way back, there was a guy, Qadry Ismail, who held out. And basically, my agent was like, look, how do you feel about the offense? Great. Do you know it? Yeah. Are you in shape? Absolutely. Well, I am going to get as much money as I can. And we're going to just, if we don't get what we want, I'm just going to hold out. I was like, man, get it all. Get every little dime that you can get. I don't care. I feel good about it. I feel good about me. And I held out. So obviously things are slotted now. So, there's a little bit of percentage bump each year. The rounds, they slot kind of like where guys are at. The agent might be creative as far as possible mile markers that you can probably hit to earn some extra monies, or maybe if he, is really creative, like Ojabo's, then he's probably trying to squeeze out some more money. So this is, kind of uncharted territory because it is so slotted. But at the same time, I'm sure Ojabo's like, look, I ain't playing like right this minute, week one. So I feel really good that I want all the money I can get because I feel confident in my abilities. And that's how you should be. And so I don't really see a big deal.
Yeah, and this was a player we're talking about who was pretty much a mid first round pick. He was guaranteed most likely a mid first round pick selection before his injury. I mean, he was a player that was popularly mocked to the Ravens at 14. Like, that was a guy that you could see almost everybody saying, yeah, this would be a great fit on the Ravens. They need a pass rusher, suffers the injury, and obviously gets knocked down to that second round. So I know obviously the injury is something that he's going to, I think, come back from it and do a great job at. But, it did cost him a bit of money in terms of slotting value and whatnot. So I think, yeah, for Ojabo, I don't think it'll be he's going to go back to college and re-enter the draft or anything. I don't think it'll be something like that. I just think, they're working on it. I think they'll get it done. But Q, there have also been a couple of plays, and then kind of transitioning into the second segment, that the Ravens have posted from training camp. The one from Wednesday's practice being that really incredible, like, work of art back shoulder throw from Lamar Jackson and Devin Duvernay, and good on both parties. I mean, the ball placement from Lamar Jackson, you have the concentration from Devin Duvernay. I mean, what does a play like that say to you, where Lamar Jackson can place a ball like that in such a window, and Devin Duvernay has the concentration to snag it in the end zone?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Obviously, that play, that throw, that back shoulder throw has been, for however many long. The one thing I think, if you look at uh, the timing and execution of it, I don't think that's their first rodeo. So I think the beauty of what we're seeing is that he's throwing it in a competitive situation, even though there's no pads. The timing and how he threw it was Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers-esque, because those are two guys that come to mind when it talks about back shoulder throw. And if he gets more and more comfortable with it, bro, watch out. Like, I've seen him try it in games and not often, but I remember Miles Boykin when he was here. He tried it with him and it wasn't really successful. There's some miscommunication between the two, but this is really, really cool how he just stepped back, he saw it, and he slung it and just did it with such confidence and swagger. That speaks to Lamar's maturing as his quarterback play over the years, but then also just Duvernay feeling like, yo, my time to shine. I gotta keep making plays like this. And for him to go out there and snag it really says an awful lot to his preparation.
Yeah, and you make a good point because I know a lot of people have been making big deals about the fact that these wide receivers are so young. They don't have the chemistry with Lamar Jackson that maybe a Marquise Brown did. But these are the reps. These are the reps right now in training camp where you're able to get those repetitions. Now, I am still of the mindset that they should sign a veteran guy, go out and get somebody. But if they don't, I think they're okay just to see what they have, which, again, I feel like is the most likely situation at this point. Julio Jones was the one guy I think really could have moved the needle for them. I think the only other one you could really say even moves it slightly is Will Fuller. Other than that, I mean, Odell is probably the most talented out of those bunch, but he's still injured. T.Y. Hilton feels like he's going back to the Colts. It sounds like it feels like that. So I think if the Ravens just want to see what they have in their young guys and then reassess maybe a month in, 6 weeks in, and then at that point, you could maybe make an addition or trade or whatnot. I think they have that. But these guys like Rashod Bateman, Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, Tyler Wallace, look, I'm excited to see him get playing time, whether there is a veteran in that room or not. I think that they all will have good years, but I just think a veteran adds an element to everything. So we'll see what they do there. But it's exciting to see Lamar Jackson have that connection with these guys early on. And we saw that the Minnesota game where Lamar Jackson placed that ball within like that 0.1% window to Devin Duvernay in the end zone. Those are the throws I'm looking forward to seeing. But we'll continue talking about training camp here, diving into some of the takeaways from day 2 of the full team practices for Baltimore coming up here in the second segment. So be sure to stay tuned for that. First of all, I do want to tell you a bit about Bet Online, and BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to the BetOnline website or use a mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oshricker still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. Again, exciting stuff with training camp being here. And I do want to dive into some of the takeaways from day 2. Now, I want to talk about the rookie tight ends because we're kind of on 2 different scales with these guys right now. Isaiah Likely earned a lot of praise yesterday and had a lot of big plays. A big, long touchdown from Lamar Jackson. That was the play of the day. Whereas Charlie Kolar is going to have sports hernia surgery here. So again, one guy's practicing making plays. The other guy, unfortunately, not able to be on the football field right now. I mean, what are your takeaways from Likely's praise so far, and also the fact that Kolar has to have this surgery and miss some training camp time?
Remember we were saying as far as injuries and, this team last year, if they hadn't gotten injured, is darn near a certain lock for them to make the playoffs. They were that good. They were that talented. You look at the offseason, they reloaded, but they reloaded with 2 tight ends. And I've been saying all along that, from part of bully ball is having tight ends, but not only just tight ends, but guys that can be explosive in the game. And I think for Charlie, when I saw that they drafted him, then they came back with Likely, I was like, just, wow, this is a really boss move by Eric DeCosta, because what's happening is he's going to establish bully ball, and your personnel package, you're not going to be able to compete with him. In other words, if Greg Roman keeps out his 3 tight ends package, and you're thinking that you're going to double up on one of the guys, in particular Mark Andrews, and these guys prove themselves early on, like, wow, you're in a world of hurt, because you got a base package in, and now they're running behind you, and there's big plays down the football field. Well, we're seeing a big play element from Lamar Jackson to Likely, so that's a bonus. But we're kind of going to miss, if you will, what Charlie Kolar can do, and again, that's a small setback for bully ball. Now, we obviously seen what happens when you have Rashod Bateman having something similar. So there's some room of understanding, if you will, and what the rehab process is going to be, and he shouldn't miss too much time. But man, that right there from a bully ball, hey, let's put in some plays and stuff like that. It's kind of a little bit of a damper on where I thought things were going to be headed going into the season. And it's weird too. John Harbaugh was saying that he had that in college and they thought that they could manage it, and now there's the time. So it's interesting because this is where some notes are going to be taken. 2 years in a row where you had draft picks have sports hernia issues. I know that's front chain dominant training compared to back chain dominant training, and I think that's something where they're going to have to really look into and be like, well, how is he really? Is he okay? Is he not okay? What is it like as far as some of the injuries? Just I think nitpicking just a little bit finer tooth comb. Now that you know that 2 years in a row you had guys with those issues.
Yeah, and for likely, you have Lamar Jackson calling him a baby Mark Andrews, and so it feels like we can see a lot of packages with these tight ends. And also, I'm excited to see the play action aspect of this whole thing, where if Bully Ball does end up coming back, and again, it feels like we're heading in that direction, you're going to see the Ravens, I think, dominate on the ground again. So then once teams begin to stack that box and say, we're not going to let you run, the Ravens will say, okay, we're going to throw it. Like, sounds good. And I think what we could see is this whole thing where not exactly 2019 in terms of the actual run pass volume, because I do think that the Ravens have what it takes to be a more balanced offense now with the way Lamar Jackson throws the football with the wide receivers they have. But I think that, again, if this is a run-first team while the rest of the league is a throw-first team, the Ravens are zigging while everyone else is zagging, I think that's completely fine because that's the personnel they have, and they can maximize that personnel. But Clifton Brown of BaltimoreRavens.com puts out these great practice reports from what he's been able to see, and a lot of stuff has come out about Rashod Bateman so far, Q. And it seems like that excitement that everybody's feeling about Rashod Bateman, we're seeing it in the practices. As Jackson's favorite target, according to Clifton, was Rashod Bateman. And there was actually a back shoulder throw. The back shoulder throws that we talked about in that first segment, Lamar Jackson emphasizing those. I mean, how important are those back shoulder throws? I know you talked about it a bit in the first segment, but just to have that in the back pocket to say, all right, you're going to make me throw it there? Well, I'm going to complete it.
So one-on-one on the outside, especially when you are a run dominant team, I mean that's something that if you look at the Miami game, the zero blitz that really you should be feasting on, and Sammy Watkins back of the end zone didn't make the play, and so we don't know if it was him alligator arming it because of the way the end zone is constructed with the dual stadium, old school dual stadium that they shared at one point with the Miami Marlins, or was it him getting just caught up in the lights? Whatever it might be, whatever the excuse was, the bottom line was they weren't successful against zero coverage. Back shoulder throw, however, is very useful against zero coverage because now Lamar is dropping back to pass and he's like, yo, they're bringing it. And so he can spot his guy and he can make a line drive type of a throw. And the DB can think he has the receiver covered, but now the receiver just at the last second, be able to make the catch. And how he makes the catch, in my mind, really will dictate them getting out of that zero coverage. So I think it's strategic. What teams have been doing against you, you got to work on overcoming, and clearly they're working on overcoming.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about the defensive side of the ball, I want to move over to the defensive line because honestly, Q, this is my favorite positional group in terms of depth on the roster. I think safety's right up there with it too. I love what they did there. But on the defensive line, you have three solid veterans. If you're talking about top six, three solid veterans: Calais Campbell, Michael Pierce, Brent Urban. You have three really great young guys too, and just Big Broderick Washington and Travis Jones. And the defensive line apparently was a standout yesterday. You have during the final 11-on-11 session, Calais Campbell, Brent Urban, and even Odafe Owe, who also is a big guy himself. They rushed the quarterback simultaneously on several plays and made it difficult for Jackson to find throwing lanes over the middle, according to Clifton here. And also, he talked a bit about Michael Pierce, who he said had a pretty good day overall. So I think when you're talking about this defensive line, Q, how excited are you for the versatility they have, the different skill sets they have, and what does it tell you that so far through training camp they've been a unit that apparently has been good?
So you can't really win if you have a weak D front. Even if you're a passing you're going up against a passing team. If you can't pressure the quarterback, it's a game over. And we saw it last year. We saw what happened when you couldn't pressure Ben Roethlisberger, when you were trying to get to the different quarterbacks that you faced, and you just couldn't do it. And then the flip side of it, you saw defenses get to Lamar when he was in the pocket. Oh, was he throwing in the pocket? Yes, he was. Anyway, that being said, yeah, bro, Kevin, I'm telling you right now, like the names you called, they're veterans. They understand what it takes. The thing that I look at, it's what happens when the pads come on and the hitting and does that same intensity rear itself in a positive way. Now we just got to see it when it comes time to put it on the equipment. I'm gonna hold a little bit of judgment before I go gaga and be all excited for them, but definitely have a lot of optimism on what they're all about.
Yeah, and I love the fact also, Q, that they're such a big group too. Like Calais Campbell 6'8", Brent Urban is 6'7". You have guys with long wingspans, and we saw and heard about a couple of drills that this team was doing about batting the football. I mean, apparently during I can't even remember anymore if it was OTAs or minicamp, but Justin Madubuike had like 3 deflections or something, or 5 deflections. How important is that? Getting your hand on the football and knocking it down to maybe force an offense into second and long or third and long.
Yeah, I think it's all about a feel of the game and the technique. If you got stunted at the line and you didn't feel like you got your best pass rush on, and now you're like, oh boy. And if the quarterback is trying to get rid of the ball, you got to have that eye up, looking at it and timing, and being able to get your hand up because the guy's got you, and you're just not going to get any further. So now, yeah, it is about stopping and getting your hands up and knocking the ball down. I just think it's so strategic. And the really good players know that, like I said, sense of timing and when to actually implement it for yourself. Now, offensive linemen hate it, and sometimes they'll either cut block or they'll just go out there and try to jab you in the chest or whatever. But it's a valuable tool when you clogging up, the middle, and if the quarterback's trying to throw it down the middle and you can't because those arms are just sitting there and it's messing up your timing and your rhythm.
Yeah, and I know that again, forcing an offense, like if there's a 6-yard completion that happens if you don't get your hand on the ball, 2nd and 4,
Yeah.
3rd and 4, it's such a difference to have an offense in a second and long. And we talked about this. I think it was like the beginning. We talked about it a lot, but I think the thing that stands out to me is the beginning part of the 2020 season when the Ravens hadn't really found their identity yet, hadn't really found their groove. Mark Ingram was struggling to run the ball. And, they were picking up 1 yard on first down, 2 yards on first down, no gain. Whereas in 2019, it'd be all right. They pick up 9 yards on first down. That's 2nd and 1. That's an easy first down. They can
Right.
get that. The difference between a 2nd and short and a 2nd and long is actually very massive. Like to be able to have 2 downs to get 3 yards as opposed to have 2 downs to get 11 yards or 10 yards or 9. To have a defensive lineman disrupt timing, as you talked about, get the ball on the ground and have an offense have to go back and do it again, it takes the wind out of the sails. So I think that having those big guys, the big wingspans on an offensive line, the combination of veterans and young guys, I think that'll be huge for them. But we'll dive into more training camp takeaways in our final segment. We'll be diving into Malik Harrison. We'll be diving into some Lamar Jackson talk and what he had to say to the media and more. So be sure to stay tuned. Still nothing to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. We're back. Our final 7 of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oshak still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. Continuing to dive into these takeaways from day 2 at training camp. Again, we're using Clifton Brown's notes here from BaltimoreRavens.com. And he said that 30-year linebacker Malik Harrison showed up quickly on a blitz up the middle. And actually, he put a tidbit in here that said Harrison had 9 sacks during his career at Ohio State, and generating pressure is really big for him. But Q, how big of a year is this for Malik Harrison? He's someone that was obviously a 3rd-round guy out of Ohio State. And it feels like, again, not a make or break year. I don't want to put that on him right now, but it feels like it's a big year because he's going to be able to earn some snaps, and I think he has to make the most of those this year.
Got to make the most of your opportunity, and however it came, it came. We won't get into that, but I know this: you keep your job based upon your merit and based upon your ability to make plays, and I think part of having a new coordinator is there's a freshness there. There's a new voice. Maybe some of the concepts are still the same, but hearing it differently, being able to then know that you can go and not be labeled per se. There's like a fresh start type of a feeling to not only Malik, but also all other guys that are out there that are really trying to make the ball club and make whatever the jump is, that next step jump, significant playing time. That's the bottom line. So yeah, I think he's in a good position, and I'm rooting for him to do what he needs to do, which is just go out there and be consistent, and when it's time to make a big play, be in position to do so.
And I feel like for Harrison in particular, he was drafted the same year as Patrick Queen. Queen was a first rounder. He was a third rounder. They came into the league together. Harrison obviously had the setback during the bye week last year. And again, I'm very happy he's okay from all of that. But I think that when you're talking about Harrison and these third year guys, I don't want to put make or break on them right now because, again, I think this is like a year to show what they have. Next year is the okay, now it's really make or break for you. But I feel like it's more make or break for Harrison now than it is for Queen, just because I don't think we've seen a ton from Harrison so far. We've definitely seen flashes. Like there have been really, really, really good flashes, but I want to see more of those flashes. That's something I want to see, especially with the fact that the Ravens might not be keeping a ton of inside linebackers this year because of their safety depth. And speaking of that safety depth, Tony Jefferson has been making his presence known. He made a quick break on a pass attempt during 7-on-7. And he was just buzzing around the secondary. That safety depth, I think, is, again, one of my favorite positions. How are you feeling now that we're at training camp with Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, Chuck Clark? You got Geno Stone in there, too. It's a deep position.
Deep position, good position, smart position, a lot of wisdom to be passed around. I think even Kyle Hamilton, as young as he is, lots to learn, but I think the willingness of it all, I think matters in a good, positive way. Um, I'm curious as to the playing time still because at the end of the day, they are like, you're talking like, hey, listen, I know who I am. I'm a competitor. I want to go out there. I want to be, that guy that's always, looked upon, counted upon. You get your street cred by playing, not by sitting back and thinking somehow, some way, because I'm on the team and I'm wearing purple and black, like that's not it. Playing matters. And I think that, the competitiveness of this squad is going to force, new defense coordinator McDonald's hand in trying to see how he can get the most out of his defense by having them all out there on the football field.
Yeah, I think McDonald's presence just himself, the transition over from Don Martindale to Mike McDonald is going to be huge. There are some aspects that'll probably stay from that Martindale era defense, but I think that McDonald's going to add his twist onto it, play guys in a much different positions, and it's going to be exciting for sure. But Q, stop me if you've heard this one before. Lamar Jackson was asked about his contract yesterday, and again, it was more of the negotiations are still there. And side note, actually, before we talk about this, Tyler Huntley, who was dealing with tendonitis, still on a pitch count. So Jackson getting a little more reps in there, Brent Hundley, Anthony Brown. But back to the contract talk. Lamar Jackson did say there was a cutoff date here to negotiate. And I'm assuming that is some point before the season. I assume that once the season actually starts, he's going to just want to focus on football, which I think is a good call. But he does say that he thinks a deal will come between him and the Ravens, and it feels like that is kind of the message here. He also says that he's not holding in because he wants to win and not leave his brothers, his guys hanging, what he said, and that's not ever been him. And so there's been a lot of conversation, Q, about will this deal get done before the season? Obviously, the Kyler Murray extension fueled those talks a little bit more. So I'll ask you again. I know I've asked you before. With the new information we have, with what he said, where are you at in terms of a Lamar Jackson contract extension?
I mean, he gave a little bit of show and tell, talking about, hey, there's a deadline, talking about, that they are ongoing talks. When he has free time to talk, obviously they have to have free time as well, which I am sure if Lamar is saying, hey, listen, bro, let's get this thing done, they're going to have a ton of free time and availability for Lamar Jackson. Now, I will say this, it was good to see Steve Bisciotti that he doesn't go to training camp. He does. He kind of wants to, read the room and see who, he spent his money on. I think those are all good things. And I think for Lamar Jackson, the template is set. Listen, I'm not going to go any lower than Kyler Murray, because why? Like, Kyler's resume doesn't stack up to mine, and I think I am more deserving of monies than he is, and that's something that easily they can talk about.
Yeah, and I think that with Lamar, there's the question of if there's not a deal before the year, will it be a franchise tag situation where you see him play on one tag? Is it going to be two tags? But there still seems to be some optimism between both sides. And again, how much of it is just media talk, who knows? But it feels like he is being genuine with what he's saying. I think he's a very genuine person overall. So I'm hoping that we can get a Lamar Jackson contract extension soon. I know the conversation, it feels like you've been talking about it for years, which I know we have been, but it feels like the conversation has been never ending. I'm sure that, Lamar Jackson, the team, it feels like they both want to get a deal done. They've both said things that make that clear to be the case. So I'm excited to see what they can do, and hopefully Lamar Jackson will be in Baltimore for a very long time. But Q, I appreciate you hopping on. Thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Ravens. Q, when we get back here next week, again, more training camp talk. I'm excited to dive into it.
I know this. Football season's here. Always great talking shop with you, and I'm looking forward to some of these scrimmages that are coming up for the Ravens. And let's get it on. The ramp up has to be delicate because of all the injuries and all the data they're talking about. But once it's time to hit. Let's see it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, and I think again we're checking off those check boxes on the checklist. Training camp is now started. We're getting to the preseason, and then before you know it, we're gonna get the cut down day, the regular season. It's right around the corner. But thank you again, Q, and thank you again so much for tuning in to Locked On Ravens. When we get back here on Monday, we'll be diving into more Ravens content, dissecting more training camp news and notes. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you back here on Monday.